It began with whispers, a womb sealed by shame, a woman mocked by her people. But Beatrice's paintings were no ordinary art. They were mirrors, forcing her village to confront the scenes buried under the old Iroko tree. Each night, her brush revealed more faces of murderers, pots spilling blood, a child erased from history. And when the truth finally came out, the village learned the dead never stay buried, because the truth has teeth. They say a woman's womb is the pride of her marriage. In Amabo, it was more than that. It was proof. Proof that a wife had not only entered her husband's house, but had secured her place in his lineage. Without it, you were a shadow in your own home. For the first 3 years after Beatrice married Chike, the village gave her grace. She was the radiant new bride with laughter that could fill a room, the one who carried water on her head and still had time to plait her neighbor's hair. But the grace was like morning dew, pretty while it lasted, and quick to disappear. By the 4th year, the whispers started. At the market, women lowered their voices when she passed, but their eyes lingered long enough to pierce her skin. This is the 4th year. Doesn't she know it's a taboo for a woman not to conceive? One old woman muttered over a pile of yams. A taboo indeed, another replied, clicking her tongue. A woman who cannot conceive brings misfortune to the family. Beatrice learned to keep her head high, but at night, when Chike turned his back to sleep, she would bite her pillow to keep from waking him with the sound of her sobs. The pressure didn't just come from the market women. It seeped in through her in-laws, her mother's voice on the long walks home, even through the subtle tightening of Chike's jaw whenever another man's wife announced a pregnancy. It was a subtle war she fought alone, and each month the enemy won. One evening, after a particularly harsh visit from Chike's mother, who had placed a tiny calabash at Beatrice's feet as a reminder of her empty belly, Beatrice wandered behind the house to the crumbling shed where Chike stored old furniture. That was when she found a cracked wooden box filled with paintbrushes, hard-dried tubes of color, and a canvas stained with forgotten attempts. She didn't know whose they were, but the moment she touched the bristles, something in her felt a connection. That night, she stayed up long after the moon had climbed the sky, mixing colors on each piece of old cloth. She painted without having any plan in mind, without thought. She drew strokes that bled her grief, splashes that screamed her shame, lines that clawed at the silent rage lodged inside her. By morning, the cloth was heavy with color, and her heart was strangely lighter. She began to paint every day, walls, scraps of wood, and inside the discarded calabashes. At first, it was just her way of saying what she couldn't say aloud, her way of getting over the ridicule, shame, and frustration. But one afternoon, when she painted a mural of a faceless woman carrying a broken pot, the village children gathered to watch. "Why is her pot broken?" a boy asked. Beatrice didn't answer. She just kept painting. She was lost in the moment, deep and intense emotional expression on painting. The image stayed on that wall, and something happened. People began to stop in front of it. Some stared, some frowned, some walked away quickly, but others lingered, women especially. It was then Beatrice realized she had found a way to enter people's minds without speaking a word. What she didn't know was that her paintings would soon stir more than curiosity. They would expose secrets the village had buried for years and put her life in the kind of danger she could not paint her way out of. The mural of the faceless woman carrying the broken pot stayed on the old mud wall for weeks. Every time Beatrice passed it on her way to the market, she noticed more footprints in the sand where people had stood to stare. Then, one morning, she found it defaced. Thick streaks of palm oil ran down the wall, bleeding into the painted woman's dress. Someone had written in charcoal above it, "Evil woman, keep your curse to yourself." Her hands trembled as she traced the dripping red stains. It wasn't just vandalism, it was a message. By the time she reached the market, the air was already buzzing with whispers. A trader selling cassava leaned in close to another. "I told you, her pictures carry bad luck. The woman murmured, "My goats died the same week she painted that wall." Beatrice kept her eyes on the ground, but her ears caught every word. That evening, Chike came home earlier than usual. He tossed his wrapper on the bed and sat down heavily. "They say you are drawing spirits into this house," he said flatly. Her chest tightened. "I'm only painting what I feel." "Then feel something else," he snapped. "You think we don't have enough shame already?" He left the room before she could answer, but his words sank deep. She didn't paint for 2 days. Her hands felt restless, her chest heavy. On the third night, unable to bear it, she lit a small kerosene lamp and went out to the sand. The world outside was silent except for the crickets and the occasional rustle in the bushes. She was halfway through painting the outline of a pair of eyes, eyes that looked almost accusing, when she felt it. A presence. She turned. A man stood at the edge of the lamplight, tall, lean, wearing a wrapper knotted at his waist. His face was half hidden in shadow, but his voice was low and steady. "You should stop." Her heart pounded. "Who are you?" He stepped closer, his bare foot silent on the dirt. "Your paintings are not just yours anymore. They are waking things that should have stayed sleeping." Before she could speak again, he pressed something into her hand, a folded scrap of cloth, damp and smelling faintly of smoke. "When the dreams start, burn this," he said. And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. Beatrice stood there, the cloth warm in her palm, the kerosene lamp flickering as if the flame was afraid. The night after the strange man came, Beatrice could not sleep. The harmattan wind crept in through the cracks of the window, licking her skin with its dry, dusty tongue. Chike was snoring softly beside her, but she lay with her eyes wide open, her mind chewing on his words. They are waking things that should have stayed sleeping. By the time the cock crowed, she had dreamt. It was not the gentle kind of dream where faces blurred like smoke. No, this came sharp, hot, and looking real. She was standing in the middle of the village square, but the ground was red, wet, and pulsing as if she was standing over the heart of something still beating. The elders sat in a circle, their faces covered with white chalk, their mouths moving, but no sound came. In the center of the circle was a pot, the same kind of pot her late mother-in-law had once used to keep palm oil. Only this one was cracked, and from the crack spilled blood, bright and warm, curling into the ground. A woman's voice, not hers, not anyone she knew, whispered into her ear. "They covered the truth with earth, but the earth remembers." She woke with a cry, sweat clinging to her skin despite the cold. Chike stirred but did not wake. The next morning, she tried to shake it off. Dreams were only dreams, weren't they? But as she fetched water from the stream, she passed Mama Nkiru's compound. The old woman was bent over her cooking pot, stirring with slow, deliberate emotions. "Beatrice," Mama Nkiru called, her voice thick like palm oil. "That picture you drew, the woman with the broken pot, where did you see her?" Beatrice froze. "Nowhere, Mama. I just painted." The old woman's eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. Then she spat into the ground and went back to her cooking. That night, she dreamt again. This time, she saw a young girl standing barefoot, white heads in her hair, running through the bush, clutching something tight in her chest. Behind her, men shouted, their feet pounding the earth. When she stumbled, the thing she carried fell open. It was cloth, stained dark, smelling faintly of smoke, exactly like the one the strange man had given Beatrice. When Beatrice jolted awake, her hands were clenched so tight her nails had drawn blood from her palms. The next morning, she went to the shed, pulled out a bare wall panel, and began to paint the girl from her dream. The brush moved like it had mind of its own. When she finished, the child's eyes stared back at her, wide, terrified, and knowing. By evening, half of the village had come to see it. Mothers clutched their children, the elders muttered among themselves, and as Beatrice watched them, she realized the fear in their eyes was not for the girl she had painted. It was for her. They came before dawn. 3 men and 2 women, faces wrapped in scarves, carrying calabashes of water and bundles of fresh palm fronds. Beatrice heard them before she saw them, the low hum of an ancient cleansing song, the kind reserved for chasing out curses. Chike was still sleeping, so she slipped out quietly. The harmattan air beat her cheeks as she stepped into the compound. There, in the grey light, they stood in front of her shed. The mural of the young girl stared back at them. Mame Jofo, the oldest of the women, pointed her broom at the wall. "This is how it starts, Beatrice," she said. "You have opened your compound to spirits that would not leave until you are carried out feet first." "I painted what I saw," Beatrice replied, her voice steady, but her heart drumming. "Seen where?" one of the men demanded. "In the shrine? In your sleep? In the graveyard?" She swallowed. "In a dream." The man spat into the ground. "A dream that smells of blood is not from God." Without waiting for her permission, they began to scrub the wall, the palm fronds slapping hard against the paint, water dripping down to the earth. Beatrice's stomach twisted. With every stroke, it felt as if they were peeling away a part of her own skin. By the time Chike came out, the girl's face was gone, only muddy streaks maintained. He didn't look at Beatrice as he spoke. "They said it was for the good of the family," he muttered. "Don't paint again, Beatrice, please." That night, she sat in the darkness of the shed, staring at the ruined wall. She thought of the strange man, the cloth he had given her, the whispers in her dreams. Something deep inside told her that if she stopped now, she would never know the truth. The flame quivered as if agreeing with her, and then, as if summoned by her thoughts, the shed door creaked open. The strange man stepped in, the night air following him like a shadow. "They are trying to erase the girl," he said quietly. "Who is she?" Beatrice asked. He sat down opposite her, eyes locked on hers. "She is the reason your womb is closed, and the reason some people in this village cannot sleep at night." Beatrice's mouth went dry. "What happened to her?" The man leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that tasted of smoke and secrets. "They killed her to hide a sin, and you are her blood." The man's words sat on Beatrice's chest like a grinding stone. "She is the reason your womb is closed. You are her blood." The harmattan wind moaned through the cracks of the shed, as if echoing the weight of the revelation. "I don't understand," Beatrice whispered. "My blood? Who was she to me?" The man's eyes were steady, unblinking. "Your mother's child, your elder sister, born before you, but erased from the family's tongue." Beatrice's breath caught. "That's not possible. My mother never—" "She never told you because the elders forbid it." He cut in. "The girl was born in the season when the yam barns were full, but she carried a curse they feared. They said she saw things no child should see, the things they did at night, the things hidden beneath the chief's compound." His voice lowered to a hiss. "She saw too much, and one night she did not wake." Beatrice's stomach turned. The dreams, the pot, the blood, it all began to press against her mind like a swelling drum. "She was buried near the old Iroko," he continued. "But the earth does not forget. This is why you dream. That is why your womb stays closed. Not because of your sin, but because the bloodline has a debt." A rooster crowed somewhere in the distance. The man stood, his shadow stretching long across the floor. "You can leave it buried," he said, "and the curse will stay. Or you can paint her again. Paint everything, and the truth will come out. But know this, Beatrice." He looked at her as if measuring her soul. "Truth has teeth." He slipped out before she could speak. The next day, she went to the market, with the scent of smoked fish and roasted groundnuts, the chatter of traders haggling over cassava and pepper. But as she walked, the hum of voices shifted, heads turned, mouths moved behind cupped hands. "She's the one," someone muttered. "The one who draws the dead." "Her womb is sealed because of what she carries," another one said. Beatrice ignored them, but her palms were damp. Every face she saw seemed to be hiding something. The guilt in their eyes was louder than their words. That night, she lit her lamp, took a fresh board, and began to paint. This time, she didn't stop at the girl. She painted the circle of elders, the cracked pot spilling blood, the shadowy figures in the bush. She painted until her fingers cramped and her eyes burned. When she stepped back, the wall seemed to breathe. The girl's eyes followed her, no longer afraid. By morning, the mural was the talk of the village. By evening, a stone came through her window. Wrapped in a scrap of gold skin was a single sentence written in red palm dye. "Stop, or we will finish what we started." The warning did not stop her. If anything, it lit a fire in her belly, hotter than the sun over the village square. For days, Beatrice painted in the stillness of night, the lamp's glow pulling over her work. She painted the faces of elders, each wrinkle, each tribal mark, each hidden shadow in their eyes. She painted the night of the killing, the broken pot, the hands that held it, the bush path where the child ran. By the time she was done, the mural covered the whole wall of her shed. It was no longer art, it was a mirror to their guilt. On the night before the New Yam festival, she pushed the shed floors wide and left the lamp burning so the whole village could see. They came in twos and threes, whispering. By midnight, the crowd had swelled. The elders stood at the edge, their eyes darting, their hands trembling. And then a sound like a wail rose from the back of the crowd. Amankiru pushed forward, fell to her knees before the painting, and began to pound the earth with her fists. "Forgive us, O Lord," she cried. "We spilled the blood of an innocent." Gaps tore through the crowd. Amankiru's confession rolled like thunder. How the elders, fearing the girl's vision, accused her of witchcraft, how they killed her in secret and swore an oath never to speak of it. One by one, the other elders' voices cracked open, spilling the truth they had buried for years. The chief himself came forward, his staff trembling in his hands. "Beatrice," he said, "you have broken the silence our fathers feared. The curse is lifted." That night, they led her to the old Iroko tree. Under its roots, they unearthed a small bundle wrapped in tattered cloth, white beads still in the hair. Beatrice wept, her tears hot and unashamed. They gave the girl a proper burial, with songs, prayers, and the breaking of the old oath. 3 moons later, Beatrice woke to the sound of bird song and the scent of ripe mangoes dripping through her window. But there was something else, a gentle turning deep in her belly. Her hand flew to her stomach, her heart pounded. She smiled, tears spilling into her pillow. At first, she told no one, not even Chike. She moved through her days quietly, painting, cooking, and tending to the compound. But every night she lay awake with one hand on her stomach, feeling the tiny flutter that proved the curse was truly broken. 3 moons later, Beatrice's belly began to swell, and when she walked through the market, women called blessings over her. She still painted, but now her murals were full of light. The girl with the beads often appeared in them, smiling with her eyes free. The village never forgot the night Beatrice opened the door to truth, and Beatrice never forgot that sometimes the brush is sharper than the spear. Then came the night of the storm. Rain lashed the roofs, lightning split the sky. Beatrice was in her shed putting the final strokes on a new mural, one of the little girls smiling, holding a basket of yams, when the door burst open. It was the strange man, but this time his face was pale, his breath ragged. "They are coming," he gasped. "The ones who never confessed. They want to end it before the child comes." Before she could reply, the shed was flooded with shadows. 3 men rushed in, machetes glinting in the lamplight. One of them, with wild eyes, raises his blade. But before it could fall, lightning struck the Iroko tree outside. The sound was like the heavens splitting open. In that blinding flash, the wall behind Beatrice came alive. The painted girl's eyes glowed, the basket in her hand spilling into a river of crimson that spread across the mural. The men froze. One dropped his machete. Another began to scream, clutching his head as if the voices of the dead were clawing at his skull. The storm raged on, but inside the shed, There was only the sound of men fleeing into the night, their cries swallowed by the rain. When Beatrice stepped outside, the whole villagers gathered, drawn by the lightning. They had seen the men run. They had seen the glow through the rain, and they had seen the mural untouched by water. The girl's smile brighter than before. Old Mame Jofo fell to her knees. "It is finished," she said. "The dead has given her blessing." From that night, no one in the village dared whisper against Beatrice again. When her child was born, a girl with bright eyes and a string of white beads in her hair, the people said the little one carried two souls, her own and the sister who had waited years for justice. And sometimes on Harmattan nights, Beatrice would paint in the shed, her daughter playing nearby, and if you looked closely at the murals, you could swear the girl in the painting was still watching, not hunting, but guarding. Because Beatrice had learned the truth. Some sins you bury, some sins bury you, and some sins you paint until the world has no choice but to see. And so, Beatrice's brush became more than paint on mud walls. It became justice, it became memory, it became freedom. In a world where silence had buried the truth for generations, one woman dared to paint what others feared to speak. She proved that sometimes the womb is not the only place life begins. Sometimes it begins with courage, with color, with a brush that refuses to stop. Her story reminds us the past may be buried, but the earth remembers. And when the truth finally rises, it does not whisper, it roars. So what do you think? Was Beatrice chosen, cursed, or both? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves deep African stories, and subscribe for more tales that reveal the power of truth, tradition, and destiny.